Hello learners, today we are going to talk about the French verbs, that is ER ending verbs and other verbs also. But this video is exclusively for ER ending verbs. So introduction of French verbs, present tense of ER ending verbs, the first group. So the contents of this video will be introduction, the first part. The second part would be the present tense of ER verbs, the conjugation of ER verbs, and then the special characteristics of ER ending verbs. So for introduction, a verb is a word that expresses an action. So for example, it is aller, which means to go, and venir is to come, or a state of being like être, to be, or sentir, which means to feel. A verb also indicates when the action or the state of being takes place. So that could be in past tense, which has happened in the past, present tense, which is happening at present, or future tense. So what is going to happen in future. The correct conjugated form of a verb are obtained from its basic unconjugated form called as the infinitive. So suppose I say I speak or I'm speaking. So the verb, the infinitive form would be to speak. I eat or I'm eating. Similarly, the unconjugated form or the infinitive form will be to eat. So that is called as the infinitive form of the verb. In English, the infinitive is formed by adding to in front of the verb, like to do, to sing, to dance, to work, to live, and all. But in French, the infinitive forms are indicated by verb endings, like we discussed in our first video. So it is ER ending verbs, IR ending verbs, and the third one is RE ending verbs. So these are the three types of verbs in French. So we'll come up with a video on IR ending verbs and RE ending verbs. But in this video, we'll be talking about ER ending verbs exclusively. So for introduction, you can see there on the screen, there are verbs like acheter, which means to buy. Appeler is to call. The verb essayer is to try. Parler is to speak or to talk. Préférer is to prefer. And voyager, to travel. So this looks like all verbs are ER ending verbs, but there are subcategories. So there are different categories of the verbs like LER ending verbs, YER ending verbs, and GER ending verbs and CER ending verbs. So they have a bit of rule, a small rule that you have to remember while writing the conjugation, while writing the sentences of these verbs in ER ending verbs. But these are the easiest ones. There is a rule. There is a set of rule. There is a set of endings for the conjugation of these verbs. So if you memorize them, then it will be very easy for you to conjugate. So these verbs, acheter, appeler, essayer, parler, préférer, and voyager, these are ER ending verbs. So we'll see how to conjugate this. The example of IR ending verbs are there on the screen right now. So the first verb is agir, which means to act, choisir, to choose, courir, to run, finir, to finish, mourir is to die, sentir is to feel, vouloir means to want. So these are IR ending verbs, and these are the irregular ones. So the conjugation of each verb is unique in this one. There will be some verbs which have the same type of conjugation, but basic majority of the verbs have different forms of conjugation. So the key to remember the conjugation of these verbs is to write it n number of times by Okay, so that is the only key. We also did like this when we were the beginners in this language. So keep a copy and write it like 10 times, 15 times in a day. Then only you'll be able to remember the conjugation. In present tense we are talking about. We will do it in other tenses also later. Then the verbs, introduction of RE ending verbs. The RE ending verbs are there on the screen. So the verb comprendre, which means to understand. Conduire is to drive. Entendre means to hear. Sourire means to smile. Rire means to laugh. If you remove that S-O-U and the rest of the thing, that means to laugh, rire. The verb vendre means to sell. Vivre means to live. So these are the examples of RE ending verbs, but we will be concentrating basically on ER ending verbs in this video. So it is useful to classify the verbs in the three groups because different conjugation rules apply to each of them. So as I told you, each and every verb will be unique in this RE ending and IR ending, and there are subcategories in ER ending verbs even. So the irregular verbs like être, which means to be, avoir, to have, and aller are not a part of this group. So they are different. These are auxiliary verbs. So you have to remember them separately. The present tense ER ending verbs. To learn how to conjugate regular and irregular ER ending verbs, the most common category, let's use these verbs below as examples. So the verbs are there on the screen, so you can conjugate these verbs for your practice. The verbs are chanter, which means to sing. Appeler, to call. Acheter is to buy. Peser, to weigh. Essayer, to try. And voyager is to travel. So you can conjugate these verbs for practice. The conjugation of ER ending verbs. So how to conjugate ER ending verb? So first of all, you have to remove ER. We have already discussed in a different video, but we are just revising a bit. So you have to remove the ER of this verb, like the verb here is chanter. So you will remove this ER and you have this thing, chante. Now we will be conjugating it. You know the rule, that is we add E with je, we add ES with tu, we add E again with il and L, we add ONS with nun, we add EZ with vous, and with il and L we add ENT. So we will be conjugating the verb chanter by the rule, the same rule that we have for ER ending verbs. So you can see there on the screen. So the endings are in black: E, ES, E, ONS, EZ, and ENT. So the first person singular is je chante. Je chante is I sing or I'm singing. Tu chantes is you sing or you are singing. Il chante is he sings or he is singing. Elle chante is she sings or she is singing. Nous chantons, nous chantons. We sing or we are singing. Vous chantez, you sing or you are singing. Ils chantent is they sing or they are singing. And elles chantent is they sing or they are singing. So these are the first person, second person, third person conjugations in singular and plural. So you can conjugate the other verbs following the same pattern, but we will discuss what are the exceptions and what are the key points that you need to remember for other ER ending verbs in subcategories. So the other useful verbs which follow like the verb chanter are aimer, which means to love or to like, étudier, to study, habiter, to live, parler, to talk, travailler is to work. So you can conjugate these verbs like chanter for practice. The verbs je chante, tu chantes, il, elle, on chante, and il, elle chante are pronounced exactly in the same way. So first person singular, second person singular, and third person singular, and third person plural. They all are conjugated in same way. This means the final E, S, and ENT are silent. So don't pronounce when there it ends with ENT, don't pronounce it as chantant. It's chante. So the pronunciation would be same. This rule applies to all above verbs and to the similar to them. So all the verbs that we saw in the last slide, so they will have the same pronunciation. Just it will change in nous and vous. Like I said, nous chantons, vous chantez, je chante, tu chantes, il chante, elle chante, nous chantons, vous chantez, il chante, elle chante. Okay. Now there are some verbs which are ending with ELER. Like the verb which is there on the screen is s'appeler or appeler. And there are some verbs which are ending with ETER. So we'll see what happens to them while conjugating it in present tense. So that L and T becomes double L and double T. So we'll show you here, but it doesn't happen with nous and vous. I will show you here in the next slide, the conjugation. So the verb s'appeler, there is single L in the infinitive form. But when it is conjugated, you can see here in je, tu, il, elle, and the last one of il, elle, it becomes double L. But it remains same in nous and vous. All right, remember this rule. So j'appelle, tu appelles, il, elle, on appelle, nous appelons, vous appelez, ils appellent, and elles appellent. Similarly, the verb jeter, which is to throw, you can see here it is double TE in first person singular, second person singular, and third person singular, and third person plural. But in first person plural and in second person plural, there is single T. Okay, so when you will have the situations like this, the verb which is ending with LER and TER, you have to make it in double. And the other ones like nous and vous will remain same. So don't do that double L and double T thing in nous and vous. Remember these key points. The other verbs that you can do, that you can follow for the conjugation are rappeler, to call back, épeler, which is to spell, feuilleter, to page through. So you're turning pages, you're going through the pages. Rejeter is to reject, and projeter is to plan. So these are the verbs which are like LER and TER ending verbs. So remember to make it double L and double T also. There are some verbs which are ending with ELER and ETER do not double. There are some verbs. It's like acheter and peler. But acheter, there is a small point to remember in that one. So E in the last syllable of the root changes to accent grave. So you have to put accent grave in all the conjugated forms except in nous and vous. So like the verb acheter, you can see here at the bottom. If you say j'achète, that is I buy. So you have to put one grave accent on E. And the verb is acheter. So I'll show you in the next slide how it is conjugated. J'achète, grave accent. Tu achètes, grave accent. Il, elle, on achète. So there is grave accent on E. But not in nous and vous form, like nous achetons, vous achetez, ils achètent, and elles achètent. So remember this point while conjugating this acheter verb, you have to put accent grave in that. And similarly with the verb geler, which is to freeze. Remember the accents, grave accent. There are 22 irregular verbs like acheter, geler, and here are 5 examples of those type of verbs like fileter, modeler, peler, ciseler, and écarteler. Okay, so the meanings are there on the screen. Stop a bit and then write the conjugation of these verbs following the same rule of grave accent. The verbs like préférer, préférer, you can see there is accent aigu on the 2 E's of this verb. Now, for these verbs in accent aigu, in the last syllable of the root changes to an accent grave. So there'll be, when you will conjugate it, there'll be one accent, aigu accent, and the other one will be grave accent, except for the first and second plural, that is nous and vous. So you have to remember the exceptions in nous and vous. So je préfère, tu préfères, il, elle, on préfère, nous préférons, so both aigu accent, vous préférez, both aigu accent, and il préfère is one aigu and the other one grave. So I prefer, you prefer, he or she prefers. Nous préférons, we prefer, vous préférez, you prefer, and il préfère and elle préfère is they prefer. So the special characteristics of ER ending verbs like préférer, so that change of accent thing happens in these verbs also on the screen, like considérer, espérer, régler, répéter, and récupérer. So considérer, to consider, espérer, to hope, régler, to regulate or to pay, répéter, to repeat, and récupérer, to recover. The verbs like ending with EC, ER, EN, ER, EP, ER, 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 ES, ER, EV, ER, and EV, RERE have a silent E before the last syllable. Peser, to weigh. The silent E in the last syllable of the roots form changes to accent grave, except the plural nous and vous form. So you can see the conjugation of the verb peser, je pèse, tu pèses, il, elle pèse, nous pesons, vous pesez, il, elle pèse. Other verbs like peser is to amener, which means to bring, se lever, to get up, se promener, to walk, ramener, to bring back, and élever, to raise. So if you conjugate se lever verb in pronominal, so that becomes je me lève. So the first E will have a grave accent on this se lever verb, okay? But not in nous and vous. Verbs ending with AYER, such as essayer, which is to try, and payer, to pay, changes their Y to I. Remember this, Y will be changing to I in all persons except the first and second person plural. I'll show you how to conjugate it. J'essaye. The original verb has Y, but when conjugated, there is I. J'essaye, tu essayes, il, elle, on essaye, nous essayons. Y. Vous essayez. Y. Ils essayent, and elles essayent. So there is I in third person plural. Remember these key points. Verbs ending in GER like voyager, manger, and all. So you have to put an extra E in the conjugation. Not nous voyageons, it is nous voyagons. Nous mangeons, like the verb manger. So I will show you how it is conjugated. It remains same almost. But when it is conjugated in nous form, you have to remember to put extra E. Nous voyageons. Je voyage, tu voyages, il, elle voyage, nous voyageons, vous voyagez, il voyage, elle voyage. Similarly, with the CER ending verbs, we put a cédille accent in nous form. We cannot pronounce it as nous commençons. It's nous commençons, only in cédille accent, like the verb prononcer, lancer. So go and search a bit the CER ending verbs. And don't forget to put this cédille accent in the conjugation. So it will be nous commençons, only in nous form. There are some verbs like corriger, exiger, manger, nager, and partager. These are there on the screen right now. And while conjugating it, remember that these will have GEONS. Corrigéons, exigeons, mangéons, nous nagéons, and nous partagéons. Remember to put that extra E. Otherwise, it would be a mistake. Okay, so these are the key points to remember, to summarize in all these cases. This is a general pattern of conjugation that first person there'll be E, in the second person singular there'll be ES, in third person singular it would be E, in first person plural the ending would be ONS, in the second person plural the ending would be with EZ, and in third person plural the ending would be of ENT. But remember the key points. Remember the key points when it changes, when there are grave accents, when there is cédille accent, when it becomes double T, when it becomes double L in the cases. Okay. So c'est tout pour aujourd'hui. Au revoir. Merci.